What is the difference between a festival, a weekender, or a retreat? And what is the best event for you to attend in your journey right now? Well, let's find out. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of ZoukNerds. In this episode, we're going to start a conversation talking about different types of events, their benefits, their cons, our experience, and our recommendation for you in your journey right now. So, let's go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Adayl Iost and I, and today we have here our amazing co-hosts, Gui Prada. Hello, Gui.
Everybody. Good to be back.
And of course, Adayl Iost.
Hello, humans. How are you doing today?
All right, everybody. So here we are for season 5 and embarking in another topic. Today, we're going to be talking about events. Very often, as dance teachers and dancers ourselves, we get the question, what event should I go to? What event is best for me at this point in my learning experience? Whether you're just beginning or you've been doing Zouk for a long time, or doing any kind of dancing for a long time, to be honest, because the way that we're going to be covering this topic is not really only focused on Brazilian Zouk event or Brazilian dance event, but hopefully this will be informational for anybody from any dance style. So the way we see this, there are different types of events, right? There are events that are super large events with teachers and classes that you cannot see any end of it. The lineup is incredibly long and the classes are so many per hour that it's very confusing to take classes and choose the ones. And there are many other types of events such as smaller events, holiday events, marathons, and many others. That's where we want to go today. So to start with, guys, let's talk about what kind of events we prefer to go either as teachers or as dancers. For me, I really like either a medium size event that is really focused on long workshops, social dancing that is relatively early, competitions, I enjoy them, but they don't have to happen in that event, or really small events that are all focused about getting to know each other, classes that have topics that, yes, they do have technique involved and deep information involved, but also classes that are focused on fun, community, social dancing, and personal development. So, how about you guys? What kind of events do you like?
For me, I completely agree with you, Alison. I think the medium to smaller events are always great. Also, we will not discount that some of the bigger events, depending on who is there, always feels like a family reunion for the people that sometimes you never see on smaller events, and then suddenly everybody is there. So there's that component of the bigger events or holiday events that everyone wants to go. So as an attendee, sometimes that it's good too. And also, I feel that the smaller events, as you said, also bring that feeling of like more collective spirit to all the attendees. So a mix of them all, for me, it's fantastic throughout the year. What about you, Gui?
I have an overall preference for the smaller stuff like the weekenders. For me as a teacher, the weekenders are one of the most ideal situations because I like to spend time with people, teaching and going through a progression, social dancing with everybody, getting to know the community. So I like the weekenders that we do in the local scenes when I visit. But that tends to be my favorite stuff. My second favorite definitely goes to the retreats. The retreats where it's the same idea, where we get to spend time together in a more intense way. We have smaller to medium-sized groups. I've been to retreats with almost 80 people, which is a fair amount of people. We don't get to actually meet or dance with everyone. But the fact that we spend the days together in the same location and we learn together. I do the classes as well. I teach the classes. So this combination of things create an environment that is very fulfilling for me. I think these days I feel overwhelmed very easily by the amount of people and the amount of stuff. So the less stuff and the less people in the sense of up to like 80 people, I'm fine. But past that point, it starts to get too much. And then these days, these are my preferences. I think so then aligning with you guys, something medium. I don't know how much is a medium for you. But I think for me, medium is like up to 100 maybe. I don't know, because past, when you get to the hundreds, that's when the thing starts to get complicated, because I look around and all I see is like a void of, or not a void of, like a blur, actually, a blur of people. So this smaller stuff, definitely the smaller stuff, retreats and weekenders.
Right. So let's say we have 6 different types of events that we can talk about. We've got expos, the largest ones. Retreats, they can be very small, or they can be, let's say, medium. And then we have the weekenders, which are usually small, but not always, because here in DC, sometimes we have weekenders that are quite large for a weekender style. And then we also have educational ones that we're not really talking about the size in that case, the holiday ones and the marathon ones. And for today, let's just focus on the expo, retreat, and the weekenders, and then we focus on the other ones in the next episode. So what do we classify and what do we think when we say expo events?
Expo events, when I think about it, especially when my lawyer days, expo events were like, we had the franchise expo. So this giant place with all these little, how they say, the booths of each franchise opportunity for everyone to get. So you had the McDonald's, the Bob's, people that are not from Brazil, we don't know what Bob's is. Bob's.
From Rio, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's more a Rio chain.
So Rio, fast food chain, the best milkshake.
Oh, yes.
And then, best milkshake, better, best. It's actually, it's more like handmade. You see them putting the ice cream, you see them putting the milk, you see them putting the thing. So it's pretty cool.
Okay, stop.
So that's what I imagine an expo is. And then we had the talks where each franchise company would go ahead and talk about how it was to work for them. So it was this large thing where you get to see everything. When I think about dance events, Brazilian Zouk events, expo events, I think about the very large ones with a very long lineup, a lot of DJs, a lot of stuff for you to do. You have the day party, the night party, you have the in-between party, you have the competition, you have the after party, the pre-party, the after party. So that's how I see the expo events. For me, one of the biggest examples in the movement universe of expo events is Interfusion that happens here in DC early in the year, which is an enormous event with more than 1,000 people that has 6 rooms with classes concurrently going on. And in the night, you have, I think, 4 or 5 different parties for you to go in different styles of dance and movements. So that's, for me, it's the biggest that I've known in terms of like expo event.
Yes, I agree with everything you said. And I'm going to mention now how and when I recommend that style of event for students or for friends who ask me. Basically, I think an expo event is a great way for you to really see the world out there. Especially if you've been dancing for a little time or you haven't really traveled much, you don't know what styles do you like, what type of teachers do you like, what kind of technique do you want to really work with in your body. An expo event is a great opportunity for you to get a taste. And this is really the focus for me of an expo event. You get a taste of everything, but usually you don't get enough time with teachers to actually understand their methodology. you don't usually get enough time with DJs, or you don't usually get enough time with other dancers or your own friends, because they're really big events that are sometimes hard to actually find your friends in those events. I remember an example from not long ago where there was this event, Warsaw Zouk Festival in Poland, that I heard people were booking a time to meet friends to social dance. Yes,
I
Guy
did
was
that.
one of the people who told me about that.
I
Because
was
the event
booking.
is so huge that you really don't get to see your friends unless you tell them, I will be at this place at this time. Let's meet up either for some food or for some social dancing. Those are the Expo events. And it's a great opportunity, like I said, to get a taste for everything, but not really to get in depth with anything, if that makes sense.
Yes. And for you, Adayl, how is your Expo events experience?
Yeah, I completely agree with you guys with everything that you guys said, that it's sometimes is even difficult to find your friends in this type of events. Sometimes you just see the person on Sunday night and you're like, where have you been this entire time? Like, did you just arrive? Also, what we mentioned about classes, I think when students ask us, what do you think, what class should you take on this large Expo events? Sometimes we need the students to understand that the classes are usually shorter, like 15 minutes to an hour with recaps and demos. Also, I really truly believe that this type of event is more not a learning per se experience, but more a content collection that you go and you just record the recaps and you have that content for yourself. So as Guy was saying about the lawyer expos, I think it's more of a taster test. You go to a booth, you taste that teacher, and then you go to another booth and you see what they have to offer, and then you can pick and choose. And most of the time, as Alison was also saying, that we want to go to these events to connect to certain artists, to connect with DJs, but sometimes the artists are booked with privates the entire day besides the time for their classes. And for example, Elevation last year, one of the days Leandro and I were booked like until midnight. And I'm like, okay, great for you. But I also understand, like, you're busy until midnight and then you're going to go shower and then you're going to get ready for the social and then you're going to show up for the social. So sometimes it is hard with this balance of expectations from what the event is offering from what the students are expect to get out of it, right? What do you guys think about that, about this difference of expectations?
I think you made a great point there. The Expo events are great for networking. From a dancer perspective, to get to know people from other locations, to get to dance with people from other locations, not just within the same country, but also from different countries. For artists that are wanting to create connection with other artists, whether they want to travel more or they want to go to a place where they haven't been before and they end up meeting somebody from that area. For DJs, when I meant artists, I mean DJs and teachers. DJs also get to experience music that are more favorable in different areas. So not only the teachers, they get to see, and the students, they get to experience, but I love Expos because of the variety. So I think that's a great point. Networking and variety are great for anybody wanting to attend this type of large events.
In my experience of these events, I often go to them with the false hope that I'm gonna be able to see and dance with everybody that I intend to. It's an enormous false hope that I, these days, completely let go of that. I remember going to my first Dutch Zouk Congress in 2018, and I knew that all these people were gonna be there, and I was so excited. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna be able to dance with all these people. It got to the end of those 5 days, and I did not get to dance with probably 80% of those people that I wanted to dance with, because It's ginormous. There is even like a funny story. I was there with Anderson, Brenda, Kuna, my leads. We're all in the same house. And then at some point, Anderson and I, we gave up. We're like, man, it's not going to work. Let's just enjoy the city. Let's just enjoy around, because Adayl said content collecting. And I see this as like a menu. There's like this giant menu that you look at. It's like, okay, what can I choose for my 2:00? And then I choose one of the 7 rooms and I go to one of the 7 rooms for the social dancing. What do I choose? Do I choose the chill, the crazy, the more chill, the dark? So there's all these options, like a menu that you have. And Anderson and I, we gave up and we just started walking around. And then on the last day, as we were leaving, I knew that Raven was there. I saw Raven on the first day, and then no more. And this is in the last day. As we were leaving, we see Raven and another follow that we really like to dance with. And basically, Anderson and I, we looked at each other, and we looked at them, and they looked at us, and we started dancing, all 4 of us. And this only dance made the whole event worth it, because I think we were more like, we let go of the idea. So it's good for networking for sure. It's good for you to get to know what's going on in the scene, in the world, who the new teachers are, who the new DJs are. You get to experience a lot. But I think that from my experience, if you are not in this mindset of letting the thing flow as it goes, it can be a little anxiety. It can create anxiety in you because you're not seeing your friends, you're not dancing with the people you wanted to dance with, so like your expectations going in, they're not met because of the size and the magnitude of the thing. So an Expo event, in my experience, becomes more enjoyable when I really let go and I let the flow take the experience wherever and whenever it's gonna take. So I think that's something that works for me. I don't know how it is for you guys or for other people.
Right. Now let's maybe switch gears and let's talk about these smaller ones, the weekenders and the retreats. Guy's favorites, and for most of the year, to be honest, my favorite too. And I'll say it right away why. For me, I love weekenders. I think they're the top of my list. Because when I look at it from a teacher's perspective, I get so much time with the students to actually see them, talk to them, share with them everything that we are sharing that weekend, whether it's classes, meals, social dancing, even like random chats at different times of the day, before the class, at the end of the social. And the fact that we are all together for 3 days, it's usually maybe 20, 40 people, to me is like the dream. The dream as a student and as a teacher. Anytime that I have the opportunity, I try to go to other teachers' weekenders as well, because as a forever student that I consider myself, when I want to learn from somebody, I want to spend many hours with them. The teachers that I really appreciate, that I love to learn from, they're not really usually very easy to understand. What I mean by that is if you just have one class with them for an hour at a congress, at an expo, you may not actually understand the reason why they do the way they do. But when you spend about 6 hours with them or 10 hours over 3 days, that's when you understand, okay, they do this because of this and then because of this, and everything that they mentioned on Friday is making sense now. So for me, it's very much of an experience of trust the process. Just go for it. Trust the process. Don't judge hour by hour. How much am I getting? How many moves am I getting? Am I improving like 5 points every day? Now, just allow yourself weeks after the weekender of social dancing, of digesting, going through your notes to really understand. And for me, that's the beauty, the magic, and why I love weekenders and retreats in that case so much, because then the retreat in the context that we're talking here, the retreat also involves other aspects that are not just Brazilian Zouk, but other topics maybe for community development, personal development, other activities that are not only dance class and dance social, but maybe going on a hike, going for a swim, music, chats, dinners. So yeah, retreats and weekenders are really the ones that I would consider the ones that feed me the most as an artist, teacher, and dancer.
Yeah, I like that. I want to get a hook out of on the thing that is said to go with the journey of the weekender or the retreat and see how that's going to wrap up in the end of those 10, 12, 8 hours that we have in these events, normally in a weekender setting, for example, because I have been through the experience as a teacher where the students wanted to know at each time, at each exercise, what was the point of each thing, without seeing that in the end, things would make sense. And when you mentioned that, it made me remember of my first days teaching back in 2017, 18, where I would go through this on a very consistent basis because weekenders were the first kind of events that I started teaching. And I remember this desire of understanding each step of the way. And then I would ask, wait a little bit, trust, patience, because then in the end, everything would wrap and make sense. So that's something that when you said that, you immediately brought back those memories. And for me, the weekender is really about getting to know the community, the scene, getting to dance with them, and getting to feel how the dance is being danced, how the dance is being absorbed in different parts, in these smaller places. Because the expo, like you said, because of the magnitude of it, we don't get to experience in full what the weekender can provide, which is understanding how the dance is being absorbed. And this, for me, as a local instructor and a travel instructor, this informs so much the work because I see what is really relevant in the sense of what is it that I can share with them that will not only convey a way to dance that is maybe more ease on the body, on the mind, and also convey a little bit more of the culture, a little bit more of the background of this dance. So this is something that really, really inspires me. And in the retreat side, I have so much more to talk about it, but I'm going to let Adayl talk because retreats is also something that I really enjoy. And I've had the opportunity to participate in retreats of different kinds. Retreats that were only Zouk lessons. And then we had retreats that Zouk was maybe 70% of it. And retreats where Zouk was 10% of it. So different kinds of retreats with different approaches that I would like to comment later. But now I'm going to let Adayl talk about the weekenders a little bit. Yeah, Adayl.
No, for sure. I also do love weekenders as a teacher, as a DJ, as an attendee. Funny enough, as a DJ, I was going back through some sets that I recorded last year, and I did a Iago and Vanessa weekender in Michigan, and I was the only DJ there. So I was playing for the entire social, pretty much like 3-4 hours of socials. And I found a set yesterday that I didn't even remember that I had recorded that was like completely just chill traditional songs because I was catering to what the weekender is. That I think when we mention different types of events, I think there's a big difference for us as DJs too. What are you catering to? When you have this big expo, you have 700 people in a ballroom. What you're gonna play that is gonna cater for every one of them, And when you are on a weekender, as we're talking about it, on the Iago and Vanessa weekender, I felt like the opportunity of like, let me just dig on my traditional songs bag and see what I can bring to this table and some gems. I'm gonna say some gems. I'll share with you guys the set later too. But it's very interesting on that perspective, how closer and how more as a cohort you move when you are on this type of events. And as Gui was saying, I think for the students that join this type of events, weekenders specifically, understanding the whole journey of the process, because when we as teachers, we go to this type of events, we are trying to think the weekender from Friday to Sunday, not necessarily the 2:00 class, the 3:00 class, and that's it, great, social, bye, right? We're trying to build the entire experience for the students that not necessarily the anxiety type gets it. They want as Gui was saying, what is the Friday class? I want to know what's the point of this and everything. So I think for the teachers, it's also an opportunity of giving to the community as we mentioned, a journey of learning, not necessarily just that block of experience that we would have on a big event for sure. And as we mentioned about retreats, I think I also do like them, and I definitely want to hear Guy's experience on all of that. And Allison was just recent on a retreat too, with Christina and Igor and Nelly. That is a interesting experience that we want to hear about it too. And I feel that for me, the retreat experience also does feel like a weekender experience in some sort, but with different, as Allison was saying, different types of offerings that not necessarily would be just the Brazilian Zouk part of it, right? So for me specifically, I know I'm biased, but MMM, for example, is a great experience for me as a retreat, that we have Brazilian Zouk classes, and we as teachers, this past MMM, we had Raven and I, we had Bruno and Raíssa, and Paulo and Luisa, which feels like a good amalgamation of teachers, I'm gonna say, and like for us to get together and plan the classes that we're gonna give, and how that also feeds on what the event proposition is, not necessarily what the teacher's proposition is. As Gui was saying about the weekenders, we as teachers, we also need to know and get to know the community to see what we can offer to that community, not necessarily the community just take what we have, period, right? So I think it's a really good opportunity for us teachers to play on this adaptation of our teaching skills and content and everything.
And before Guy gets into the retreat part, I just want to mention that for us here, I think we refer to weekenders as progressive weekenders. And this may be new for some, but this is also very interesting, because when I talk to organizers and I talk to dancers, I always tell them, I would love to do a progressive weekender, which means every topic is connected to the other. And I even ask the organizers in that case to only allow full pass, which means Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you have to attend all of the classes instead of like only Sunday pass or only Saturday pass. Because again, we're building something that builds over time from Friday to Saturday to Sunday. And if somebody shows up on Sunday, not only they're going to struggle with the content, but also they're going to struggle to understand the content and why we got to that place. There are weekenders that I would say they're more casual weekenders, where you can just pick and choose the topics that you want. For example, we just had our District Zouk anniversary. That was some sort of a large weekender where you could pick what classes you wanted to do. But when you're talking about a weekender with myself or with Adayl or with Guy, it's more like a progressive journey over 3 or more days. That's the type of weekender that I really love and that I would recommend for students who are really looking into learning someone's teaching and someone's methodology in depth instead of getting a taste. So you go to the Expo event, you get a taste for all the different types of teachers, and then you pick a few and you go like, well, whenever I see these guys around somewhere, I'm going to go to that weekender because I really enjoyed their classes and I want to spend 3 days with them. That's my highest recommendation of like what to do in an expo that can help you later on, such as choosing teachers to attend weekenders with.
Yeah, and this is something interesting that we can bring back in another episode when the teacher is perceived by the market as a teacher that is good for a weekender, a teacher that is good for the expo. Because some professionals, you don't see them in weekenders, and some professionals, you don't see them in the expos, or very rarely. Because, for example, I have had the experiences of being invited to an expo-like event and then uninvited a couple of days later, because there is a perception that a weekender with me would be more interesting than having me at the expo, which is very interesting because there is the idea that this instructor works better if people have more time with this instructor. This instructor works better, like 50 minutes, whoa, amazing, you know. So that's something that we can totally talk about in another episode. Because like Addison was saying, we also have the weekenders that are more about not the progression, but about the amount of instructors teaching. So less people teaching, you do get to spend more time with them. It's just not progressive as it is when we have this idea of Friday, Saturday, Sunday is one package that either you get it all or you get it none, you know. And when we talk about the retreats, my experience with them, I think, fortunately, is very rich in the sense of the different kinds that I was able to be a part of, either as an organizer or as a teacher or as a participant. And sometimes retreats are related to events that have stuff on top of the Zouk stuff. When the events that we classify as holistic events, in the sense of events that have all these different kinds of things that you can take and you can learn. And in my journey as a teacher, I was able to participate in retreats where we had Zouk being the main thing. Brazilian Zouk is the main thing. And we have something in the beginning, something in the end to bring people some variety, like, for example, yoga in the morning or meditation in the morning, some sort of closing circle in the afternoon with some talks, with some meditation, different aspects. And the biggest feature of a retreat for me is the fact that because it's more days, it tends to be 4 to 5 days, you can spread those 10 hours that you would do in mostly 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, in more days. So it's less rushed. And you get to really spend more time with people, really sit down with them, really have food with them calmly. Because in the weekender, basically you wake up, you have breakfast, you might teach a couple private lessons, then you go teach, and then have a break, you teach the second half, then you go back, shower, back to the social. Sunday, repeat. Monday morning, you leave. So you don't have time. The retreat gives you time. And that's the most valuable thing for me, this time that you get and the kind of bonding that you do with people in the retreat is stronger because you get to spend time with them. So I just like to introduce that idea because sometimes people just see the name retreat and they make an association with what that means and how the event's going to be like. But not all retreats are the same. They vary a lot. So I think asking more questions to the organizers, to those who have been before, what the retreat is about, is a good idea, in my opinion, rather than just making the call just because of the name retreat. And I have seen that happening so many times with students that don't go to retreats because it's a retreat and they think there's going to be all this woo-woo, hippie, wushy things. And it's not always like that.
Yes, absolutely. When we're talking about retreats here, we're really talking about this experience that is probably more compared to a weekender, but in a multidisciplinary approach. as Guy was mentioning, it could be mostly Zouk, or Zouk could just be a part of one of those things. And I think that what classifies to me as a retreat as well, it could be location. A lot of the times the weekender will be in the city, it will be at the dance school, whereas the retreat, it could be maybe in a cabin like the one I just went, or it could be some sort of holiday location as well, where we're kind of like going away from our daily life and daily locations, and everybody's staying together, eating together, and having a moment where they can actually slow down and take it easy. So I think that would be the difference between like a weekender where it's in the city and you go home every day and you just show up to the classes. But a retreat would be something like everybody is staying together and spending the whole weekend together and having different experiences other than just the dance classes and the dance socials. And then we still got a lot more to talk about. So we still got the educational events. Not that any of these events that we were talking about before were not educational, but we'll be talking about more of that. The holiday events and the marathons. But we don't have any more time today, so we're going to have to leave this for the next episode. Thank you for your time today, everybody. Thank you, Guy, and thank you, Adayl.
Thank you, humans.
Thank you, everybody.
And let's go for a little break. And on the next episode, we will come back to talk about the educational style events, small or large, the holidays, and the marathons. So, beijos, abraços. Tchau!